Today we're planning to really present to you a new roadmap for the implementation of integrated project delivery in the Australian construction sector. It's based on the power of BIM, and it's based on BIM-MEPAUS. BIM-MEPAUS at its heart is effectively a BIM intranet for the construction sector. At its core, it's a business-to-business system built on the power of BIM. It's one that engages all levels of the construction industry, and it's one that provides a very clear and simple framework for BIM and IPD. Effectively, it's 4 squares and 3 arrows that you need to remember and understand. It's one that seeks to build on Australian best practice and draw on international best practice as well, in terms of particularly the software and the software development. And it's not only intended to address the technology issues, but it's also intended to address a whole range of industry needs, including training, supplier engagement, and really enable the BIM to support integrated project delivery. It's one which we believe will deliver significant benefits to you, whichever part of the construction supply chain you're involved with. And it also acknowledges the contribution and the important work really made by a whole range of people in the BIM journey today. But we've really had to implement some new strategies and some new thinking to take us to where we need to be in terms of moving the industry forward to bring profitability and more productive workflows to the industry. So, as we said, we see it as the future of integrated project delivery in this country. Many of the issues Mark's already talked about, in terms of it being BIM being perceived to be too complex and too difficult to use. Clearly, lack of standardisation and issues around handling model file sizes and management. And certainly, there's a very significant issue in terms of shortage of people with the necessary BIM skills for the industry to move forward. A lot of people have told us that it's very expensive and with little real return on their investment. To date, much of the industry is working this way. So effectively what we're getting is proprietary BIM models from consultants, basically with a lot of their own embedded standards. And effectively for most contractors, what ends up happening is that they actually have to effectively just start again. That's how most of the contractors are working. Many of them are working in effectively 3D CAD, and they're not actually delivering BIM models. So this is a significant challenge for the industry, and it was interesting when we started this journey some time ago that we had a group of consultants in a room. And one of the turning points of this whole initiative was when the consultant actually realised that the technology now existed to take their BIM model and actually use it in fabrication and into construction. It was at that point really that a whole range of consultants got engaged because they realised that their model was actually going to add value through the whole project delivery process. The other thing that was fairly common was because we got no standards, pretty much every single model that we got from different consultants had different representations for things like duct and pipe, and that colour palette from Microsoft Office is nothing compared to the range of colour schemes and different representations that you get from different consultants. So if you're in the estimating department of one of these specialist contractors or a head contractor, you move from one model to another, you just don't know what you're looking at. So we really needed to produce some standards. The other thing that we felt was that there's been a long focus for many years on the use of federated models. This is a pretty typical representation out of a lot of BIM-type management books, where they talk about a federated model and the ability to pull lots and lots of different modelling packages together and somehow view it through Navisworks and generate a federated model to doing clash detection and those sorts of things. But, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago I was at a builder's office on a medium-sized project, and, you know, the way that they were working, it was taking basically the best part of a morning to bring all the models together, somehow compile them, and then to have a session in the afternoon to actually do like a coordination check. Really, this is not, I don't think, a very effective model for this industry. So when you start to think about the number of head contractors with their views, maybe 20, a number of consultants, maybe 100 consultants, all with their own views on how BIM should be done. You talk about another 100 subcontractors, you talk about another 80 to 100 suppliers, all generating their own content and to really no standard. There's about 16 million combinations of variations that you could possibly get, and probably 16 million reasons why we've got problems. So these are the issues, and in a sense we took a decision some time ago that this really wasn't the future. There had to be a better way, a more efficient way. So we asked ourselves, is this really BIM? And in fact, after 10 to 15 years of investing in BIM, are we actually really going to be able to make it work efficiently and effectively? And we really came to the conclusion that that's not going to happen anytime soon if we continue down our current path. So what did we decide to do? We decided to engage all levels of the supply chain. As Mark mentioned, we've gone and talked to people from head contractors, clients, the government, right down to the suppliers. And effectively, with almost without exception, we've basically got the peloton behind us. Right? So everyone we've talked to, pretty much, not everyone, but pretty much about 98% of people who have looked at it, and within 5 to 10 minutes, they said, this is what we need. So we've gone and talked to the supply chain, and we've spread it out from mechanical services to all services, and we've been very cognizant of the fact that it really all starts with the designers. So what we're promoting has to actually work for the designers as a starting point. The next thing is that we've gone and got what we believe are the best software developers and software support in the country that we could find. And we've got some really good presentations today from Bentley, we've got them from TSI, but really we've had to get these sorts of organisations together, and we've had to work very, very closely with them to take them from where they're thinking that we're going to be to actually what we really need. So we've done a lot of work with these suppliers. We've really redefined model content scheduling for the supply chain integration. So the scheduling that you'll see today is nothing like what you've seen before, but it's all intended to really support the designers, allow the models to travel through into procurement and into the construction model, and then to deliver a commissioned as-built BIM model. Again, to do that, we've had to do a lot of work in defining how those schedules work, and we've got some really good guidance from the likes of NDYs and ARIPS and those sorts of firms. We've also got really good guidance from industry supply chains, so people like the pump supply industry, or the PIA, have given us really good guidance on what the procurement schedules should look like. And obviously we're drawing on NEB and SIBSI type commissioning records to deliver the commissioned as-built model. We've worked very hard to resolve a whole range of technical issues, and some of these technical issues are still to be fully resolved, but we think that we've got the very best people now, and we've got Autodesk engaged as well to help us resolve some of these final technical issues to deliver a very productive environment and a very simple environment for, doesn't matter whether you're a supplier or a consultant or a contractor. With these new products and services that we're developing, you should be able to get a very productive modelling environment and a very productive way to engage in the supply chain. And we've gone out and we've tested our theories. So we've talked to a lot of people. We've got some really constructive feedback from people, and we've progressively developed on and built on the concept over the last 4 to 6 months. And we think we're just about there in terms of what we're proposing and how this is all going to come together. So that's what we did. And we really believe that we're starting to introduce some step change innovation. So what you'll see today, I don't think exists anywhere else in the world. And I think in actual fact has got quite a bit of interest from a lot of overseas companies in terms of what we're trying to do and the way that we're approaching it. So it's not a building on the current path that we've been sort of progressing along. It's really trying to sort out these issues and give us a firm footing to move forward from here. So a couple of things. Mark mentioned that we're vendor independent, but we're vendor specific. One of the very unusual things about the construction industry is that it is the only industry that you could possibly think of that goes and designs and builds very complex things and thinks that every piece of software should be compatible with every other piece of software. Whether it's the automotive industry, whether it's the aircraft industry, whether it's the shipbuilding industry, they agree on a platform and they all work and contribute to that platform. We just need to, as an industry, and in essence, the AMCA hasn't made a decision about what software to support. Basically, it was the consultant some time ago. So, basically, we're really focused on the Revit MEP workflow, and in a sense, it also is necessary to get suppliers engaged. Because some suppliers have pushed back and said, well, what happens if we're asked to do models in this format, that format and another format? How do we deal with all that? So we've set our focuses on Revit. Bentley will provide a fantastic presentation today in terms of project-wise, and it all works together. But we're focused on the Revit TSI workflow. We said that we're collaborative and we're inclusive. So when we talk about BIM and people talk about collaboration in BIM, typically what they're focusing on is project collaboration. So within project teams and how they collaborate. We've had a much different perspective. So what we've really been focusing on is collaboration at the industry peer levels. So we've got people like the Pump Industry Association who work collaboratively together to develop a standard. We've got at the specialist subcontractor level, we've got all the different industry associations together to come on board to make a total services solution. We need to get further engagement from the design fraternity, but we've already had some absolutely fantastic support from some of the designers, and they're making very significant contributions to this. The other thing that we've done is we've really built on Australian and international best practice. So one of the things that we were very aware of was the fact that what might work in other markets doesn't necessarily work in Australia. So one of the things that we've tried to do in developing the solutions is actually to support the current workflows that our industry uses. So this idea that typically from a manufacturer, when a specialist subcontractor places an order, typically they'll get technical schedules and certified drawings. What we want is a technical schedule on a certified model. Okay? To do that, we have to develop some fairly innovative software, and we're working with some pretty smart people to do that. But basically we want to get to the point that it's very, very easy for a supplier to deliver to a contractor the models that he needs to build the construction model. So as we said, it's step change innovation, and it comes down to just this single workflow that you need to understand. So, on the top line is effectively the Revit workflow, and dropping out of the Revit workflow is the fabrication packages needed for a whole lot of things that happen outside of Revit. In essence, it forms most of you would be aware of this sort of diagram about a BIM model and how it should travel with the life of the building and how it develops and is continually evolves. Effectively, those first three squares that you saw up there were the first three blocks there. So let's just go through this in a little bit more detail. So the BIM-MEPAUS design, what we're going to deliver is a all services BIM-MEPAUS Revit design package that will have all the design models that you need to do a design level BIM-MEPAUS model. So it will have things like a standard range of design pumps, a standard range of air handling units, a standard range of fans. Okay, it will have ductwork and piping standards on them, in them, so that you will be able to draw duct and pipe very, very quickly. But what you'll be drawing is duct and pipe that's actually fabricatable and actually will be able to be coordinated. So there's a very good chance that when you get a design that's been documented by a consultant using BIM-MEPAUS, that the coordination will work. The thing is then that you will deliver a BIM-MEPAUS design model to the project construction team, and that model will be whatever level of detailing that you need to, you're engaged to provide. But the fact is that the contractor will now have the same BIM-MEPAUS package, and he will be able to open, or she will be able to open that package, and because we're all using the same libraries, we'll be able to see it, work with it, fine-tune it. In that BIM-MEPAUS construction package is where we're planning to do all the approvals, all the design reviews, all the that sort of thing, primary level coordination. The other thing that we'll do with that model is where the consultant specified a pump, the contractor will no doubt go through and do their design checks or design finalisations. They'll sort out the final selection with their preferred pump supplier, and their pump supplier will deliver to the specialist contractor, for instance, the models that will actually be inserted into that model. So the thing is, now in that construction model, we've now got all of the records that we need to do a whole range of different activities on site. And it actually forms the basis, a very simple step, to get to a constructed, commissioned as-built record that we can deliver to the client. So that's BIM all the way. The thing about it is, once we've got it coordinated and we've got it approved, BIM packages, when you look at them, are not designed to be fabrication packages. So just as structure goes out to Tekla, we'll go out to a fabrication package. The fabrication package that in the duct and pipe is the one that we're using is the TSI software. A lot of the mechanical contractors are using, and the final detailing of the pipe and duct will be done in that package. When you start to get into particularly steel and using things like Victolic couplings and the like, Revit's not designed to really support that level of detailing. So when you're talking about a Victolic coupling in a riser, the gap that you need to produce is about 2.5 mil. So the only software that we know that's accurate enough and capable of supporting that sort of level of detailing is the TSI software. So that's the workflow, and that forms the basis of a whole range of things that then start to happen. One of the things that you'll see now is that we're not telling anyone which architectural package they can use. There's some very passionate architects who might, like ArchiCAD. We're not telling the structural engineers what to do. But basically, all the coordination on a project now gets into one model, and you can see that the complexity is already being reduced by about 50 or 60%. The other thing that we're trying to do is to wrap a very tight BIM-MEPAUS, BIM-IPD execution plan around that, so that when you move from one project to another, you won't be being asked to do 50 or 60 different things by 20 different head contractors. You know, hopefully we'll end up with getting back to where we were 10 or 15 years ago, where pretty much the industry had some really well-defined workflows around how you manage a design change, how you handle a variation and all those sorts of things. So, as I said, we've already reduced the complexity quite significantly. From this to that to this. Now here's where it all starts to come together in terms of being a total solution. So as I said, we do most of our coordination in the BIM-MEPAUS construction model space. We've uploaded from the BIM-MEPAUS managed content site the models that now go into that and have the procurement schedule, but also all the information we need for commissioning and doing O&Ms and all that sort of thing. Because the pumps that we've got from the suppliers have the same DNA and the same source effectively as the design models, the interchange should be very, very easy. So what the design, or the contractor is doing in that space is actually just reconnecting things and checking it out. We also, once we've got it signed off, we then convert it via the TSI Fab MEP software, and then that allows the contractors then to start doing a whole range of things. So we can do duct and pipe fabrication. You know, there's quite a concentration going on in terms of duct making and pipe making facilities. So we can download files from a shop drawing office direct to a company like Duct Makers. It starts to set up all sorts of opportunities in terms of business-to-business procurement. And one of the things that the TSI are really focusing on is how we support suppliers who have BIM-MEPAUS content and how they can work in a business-to-business relationship. So if we're doing a prefab setup, we can effectively produce orders on suppliers and get that all happening electronically. And also, as we'll see later in the day, the US and the UK have certainly headed very strongly towards prefab, and we're starting to see a fair bit of that. So that's on that side. Now, the other thing is that the construction model allows us to do, and we can also get some of this information from the fabrication model as well, is that it allows us to automate our commissioning templates. So we can walk up to a pump and we'll have a tablet, and there will be the information that the commissioning tech needs, because the information's come out of the pump procurement model. You'll see some pretty exciting demonstrations today in terms of site positioning. So over in, certainly in Queensland and places like that, a number of the builders are doing some pretty exciting work in terms of using the data out of the model to help them in terms of site positioning and getting some very effective returns on investment there. And we can also use it, obviously, to support scheduling. So a lot of this is in place, and a lot of it is in design development. But you need to look at that and you need to understand what that means for your business. There's a lot of opportunity there for new services, and a little bit like when Green Star came out. You know, people looked at it, and a lot of people went off and did some pretty exciting stuff. We've already seen this with BIM-MEPAUS, so we've seen some of, and you'll see some of it today. Some people have taken the BIM-MEPAUS concept and done some pretty exciting work. So there's lots of opportunities in all of that to really move the industry forward and develop new services and new ways of doing things. Supporting all that is a BIM-MEPAUS execution plan that we've talked about. And the other thing that we've got is a very strong focus on education and training. So Sumit, who's leading up our training sort of work group at the moment, is really trying to develop a whole range of training packages with software suppliers, training institutes and the like. We recognise that to get us to where we need to be, unless there's people who know how to use or work with BIM, doesn't matter how good the software is. So there's a very significant focus in the initiative on training, and it covers not just CAD or modelling, but it also covers things like BIM management and model management and all those sorts of things. The other thing that we're really focused on is, and we really need contributions from the industry, is on best practice guidelines. So part of what we're trying to do is to really establish a best practice wiki, effectively, where people will contribute what is often a lot of knowledge that's been lost to the industry over time about how things get done on site. So for instance, about 95% of risers that are documented can't actually be built in an airtight fashion, right? Because the guy who's doing the BIM modelling probably doesn't actually know how one of these things gets built. But it's no use spending tens of thousands of dollars of clients' money on high efficiency motors if 20% of the air is getting lost out of the shaft, because no one can get to the back of the shaft and seal the riser. And I was talking to Grocon yesterday, and even then they came and they said, what we used to do was every third level we'd put in access from the back, and we'd put in 3 levels of duct, and that third level we'd leave the back of the shaft out so we could get to it. So we want to get those sorts of contributions and get them onto our website. And when you're a consultant and you're arguing with an architect about riser shaft sizes, there'll be some resource material there that means that you can have a productive conversation about it. So we need to talk just a little bit about managed content. So managed content is something that I guess in some sense I struggled with a little bit at the start, but the more that I've looked at it, the more that I've understood it, and the more the steering committee have looked at it, believe this is the way to go. So when people start to talk about managed content, people get a bit uptight about it, but really the thing about it is no one seems to really get upset about iTunes. Okay, it all just works. It's easy to use, and there's a lot of benefits in using managed content. So we've got what we believe is a very good managed content solution, which actually integrates very closely with the BIM-MEPAUS software, and means that your productivity should increase 3-4-fold, maybe 5-fold in terms of what you can get done in a day. And when you see the quality of the models and you understand how the models work, I'm pretty sure you'll be on board. So as I said, it integrates with the BIM-MEPAUS software. It supports business-to-business procurement. So one of the things that this managed content does is it works very closely with the supply chain. So whether you're a company like Reese or a fan company or Victolic, it all works to help you support your business. It certainly helps in terms of estimating and tendering. And we're aiming to provide some fairly innovative, simple manufacturer interfaces so that you don't have to be a Revit expert to engage in the supply chain. We want it to be no more complex than opening up Microsoft Word or maybe at a stretch Microsoft Office project. But it's got to be easy to use, and we're looking to do it outside of the Revit modelling space. And the content will be independently certified. So the other thing that we're working through is with NatSpec is to sort out some certification processes so that you're confident that when you get the content that it's been peer reviewed and checked. This will, in a sense, give you a feel for what the managed content site looks like. There'll be 2 aspects to it. So one aspect is that you'll be able to download new design models as they're generated progressively. into your BIM-MEPAUS design environment. The other thing is that you'll be able to get models from various product suppliers, but the third aspect is where we're starting to get into plant and equipment and where the scheduling needs to be loaded into the model. We'll have an interface very shortly that will actually allow you to do that very easily and effectively. So it's a pretty important part of the system, and we think that once you've seen how it works and you can see the value in it, you'll really hopefully take it on board. So just to recap in terms of a couple of the key things that we're trying to, or asking you to accept. So we're asking the industry effectively to focus on BIM all the way, and we're saying it's BIM-MEPAUS Revit at this point in time. The second thing to say about it is that whilst we're saying it's BIM all the way, because we've got the software vendors that we've got in, we can actually still continue to support a whole lot of different workflows. So there is a range of hybrid BIM, TSI, CAD duct workflows that can be supported with all of this. I know that there's when you look at the amount of work on various people's books at the moment, we know that there's a lot of work in progress at the moment, but we're hoping that with our approach, you'll get immediate productivity benefits when we launch the software, whether you're working in BIM all the way or you're working in one of your existing work environments. The second thing that we're really asking you to accept is this concept of managed content. We think we've got a very good service provider in it, and we're working hand in hand to deliver you an outstanding service. We're setting up service level agreements, okay, so that we can monitor how they're performing, and in some sense I think that should provide everyone with a degree of comfort moving forward. But the other thing that it allows us to do is it allows us to engage these software firms in a different way and to bring volume to the supply chain so that we can get the investment that's needed to make this all work. Now, if you look at, say, A.G.Coombs when it started, you know, it was one of probably a range of products, but the industry got behind it pretty quickly, you know. And the fact that they've got the volume and they've got the engagement with the industry and they're constantly listening to what industry is saying has really allowed them to develop an outstanding product. We've got to do the same in terms of our managed content service to this industry. Finally, we really want you to contribute to this, okay? So there's a lot of knowledge out there. There's a lot of best practices very quickly getting lost. We really want you to contribute to the development of this, whether it's in the form of best practice guidelines. We can peer review them. We can work it like a wiki. When Wiki started, or Wikipedia started, it was really interesting because a lot of people thought it'll never work, it'll get trashed. But in actual fact, a lot of people have made very outstanding contributions to Wikipedia, and people now, it's something that is probably more than we could ever believe. It's interesting because I thought last week, I better just check what it says about BIM, and there was an editor's note in it, and it said, BIM, this article, it might confuse the readers. Some clarification, please, but maybe we can do that. But as I said, getting your contributions to what we're trying to do is really, really important. So we've taken this very complex scenario for a step change innovation, and this really defines our mission statement. So when we talk about BIM-MEPAUS and what the steering committee are hoping to deliver, it's all of this. Okay, as I said, it includes, it's beyond just the technology. It's including education and training. It's including best practice guidelines. And if you don't look at that slide and see some opportunity, you need to have a closer look at it. So it gets down to this, and they're the only 4 blocks that you really need to understand and how they work. And Leonardo da Vinci said at some point that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And that's what we've really focused on. So we believe that we have got a very, very simple roadmap. It doesn't mean that the technology sitting behind it isn't very, very complex, but it should actually provide a very, very solid foundation for this industry moving forward. So, thank you.